What's going on, guys? CrustyKs here. Week 4 college football. I am beyond excited to talk about it. We have conference games. It's going to be super exciting. Let's jump right into it. We're going to start with Thursday, talk about a couple games Friday, and then jump into the Saturday slate. We've got a bunch to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. So this first one here, Thursday night, South Alabama taking on App State. It's going to be in Boone. If you know anything about that, it's an incredibly tough place to play. Haven't been overly impressed with App State this season. I do think that going there, like I said, it's just a tough place to play. And South Alabama was definitely a team that I wanted to write off early on in the season. But for me in this one, I do lean App State. There are a few flat sevens around right now, so I'm going to say App State -7. For me here, I saw South Alabama last week play like basically a glorified high school team. They scored almost 90 points, and I'm sure a lot of people saw that, and they're going to want to back South Alabama. The offense, it has looked decent. I'm not going to say it hasn't. But this App State offense has looked incredible too. So for me here, I think they get it going against South Alabama. South Alabama has struggled pretty much this entire season, 3 games. So for me here, I do like points. I do lean over for the game, but ultimately I just think that App State at home is just a different animal. We've seen it time and time again. Teams go there, weird stuff tends to happen, and this for me, this is no different. If you've watched South Alabama at all, which I don't think many people have, first game of the season they played North Texas in an absolute barn burner. North Texas, I believe, won. I want to say it was like by double digits. I can pull it up for you guys here, 52-38, and Chandler Morris threw for like 400 yards. Just absolutely shredded them. So in this one, while I don't necessarily think that Aguilar does the same thing for App State, I do think he has a big day. Do like him to just play really well here against this South Alabama defense, who in my opinion is just bad. So for me here, if you're looking for a prop, I think Aguilar's passing yards are in play. Let's see what we're sitting at here. Yeah, we're sitting at 299.5. I'd be shocked if he doesn't throw for 300. I'm just gonna be honest. Game total is sitting at 64.5 right now as I'm recording this. So just a game where they're expecting points. I do expect points. I just love App State at home. So give me App State -7. That's on DraftKings Sportsbook right now. App State -7. Moving on to Friday, our next one, Stanford traveling all the way to Syracuse. This is a pretty good game here, in my opinion. This one, we got two. I like Syracuse's offense a lot more than like Stanford's. I think Stanford has some pieces, and I think they can make a little bit of noise. But for me here, it's got to be Syracuse minus the 8.5. So we watched Syracuse against Georgia Tech, and I do think Georgia Tech could have won that game. Just couldn't capitalize on the scoring chances they had, which ultimately just led to them losing. But Q's overall impressed me. Their offense looked really good. Now you're going to face a Stanford defense who is definitely worse than Georgia Tech. And Kyle McCord just seems to be on some sort of crazy revenge tour. If you've been watching this guy, he is just slinging it. And he has the talent around him to do it. If you've been paying attention to Syracuse, obviously LaQuint Allen's still there. He's an incredible running back. That tight end they have, Gadsden, just an absolute monster. And I don't know who on Stanford is going to cover him, truthfully. So for me here, I like Syracuse minus the 8.5. They're at home. It's a tough place to play. Really tough travel spot for Stanford too, having to go across the country. And Ashton Daniels, he just makes too many mistakes for me. It really is what it boiled down to. When I was looking at this game, I do think originally I thought, give me the over. I like points. But when you start looking at this game, you start looking at Ashton Daniels and his lack of pocket presence. If you watched any of his games this season, if teams are able to get pressure, he just starts running around in circles and it's full on panic mode. And this Syracuse defense is definitely gonna get some pressure on him. So I think we see enough mistakes here by him to ultimately get Syracuse to cover this line for us. I think they win this thing by probably 2 touchdowns. Give me Syracuse minus the 8.5. Second game that we're gonna talk about on Friday, Illinois traveling to Nebraska. Probably one of my favorite games on the entire slate for this week 4. I will give you guys, actually have an official play on this one. I'm going with Nebraska minus the, I played it minus 8.5. I see a few 7.5s floating around right now. I'm good with any number up to 10, truthfully. So for me here, here's what I'm looking at. Nebraska has played 3 games. They've actually really only played 3 halves because they dominated all 3 games, including the Colorado game, where they scored 28 points in the first half and then just kind of sat on the ball for the second half. This team is very good. The culture that Matt Rule has brought in there and developed is incredible. This team's playing really well. They're running the ball. Defense has been incredibly physical. And now you're going to face Luke Altmaier, who I'm already not very high on, period. But I just think he's kind of getting fed to the wolves here against this Nebraska team in Nebraska. Incredibly tough place to play. It's a huge rivalry game. The stadium is going to be nuts, I'm sure, on a Friday night. And that stuff matters. Be definitely one of the toughest environments it will be the toughest environment they've played in this season, and one of the tougher environments that Altmaier has ever had to play in. Really think he struggles here. Ultimately, what sold it for me, though, is you look at Illinois, and they've played Eastern Illinois, which not a real game. Then they played Kansas and Central Michigan. So against Kansas, David Neal ran for over 7 yards a carry, which, I mean, it's to be expected. He's a great running back. But what shocked me was when they played Central Michigan, even though it was pretty limited carries because Illinois got up, so Central Michigan went away from running the ball. When Central Michigan was running the ball, they ran for over 8 yards a carry. So you're going to face this Nebraska team who's been running the ball extremely well, and I think they run all over. I think they got like a two-headed monster kind of thing with Dowdle and Ramir Johnson. I think they both have big days. I think both of their rushing props are in play. They're just far too low, in my opinion. As I'm recording this, Ramir Johnson's at 32.5, and then Dowdle's at 48.5. Like I said, they're like a 1A, 1B kind of thing. Dowdle's more of the thumper. He's a bigger body. Still equally as quick as Ramir Johnson, but Johnson's more like the pass catching guy. So I do lean Dowdle more than I lean to Ramir Johnson for the rushing yards, but I think they both cover. This is just a game where I think you have Nebraska, who legitimately is a good team in the Big Ten, and I think you have Illinois, who's entering this game kind of fooling some people because, I mean, yeah, they beat Central Michigan, woohoo, they should have. But even the Kansas game where they won, if you look at that game, they really should have lost. Jalen Daniels had three interceptions, just did not take care of the football at all. Ultimately, basically gift wrapped this one for Illinois. So Raiola, he's been really good so far for this Nebraska team. He's not going to make those mistakes that Jalen Daniels does. And ultimately, when those mistakes aren't there, Nebraska's going to be able to pull away in this game and use their defense to essentially just shut down Illinois. Hey guys, I just want to give a quick reminder that new users can bet $5 at FanDuel on any of the bets in this video and win $150 in bonus bets if the bet wins. Now let's get back to the bets. So the first one we're going to talk about for Saturday, USC taking on Michigan. If you watch Michigan against Texas, holy my goodness, they look bad. So now you get a USC team traveling to Ann Arbor. It's an incredibly tough place to play. This USC team looked really good against LSU, which the more I watch LSU, the more I'm not as impressed by that win. I can't help but think to myself that this is one of those games where like USC looks incredibly easy, and I just don't know that it is. So for me here, it's gross, but Michigan plus the 6.5, I like it. I'm going to tell you why. So they're starting Orgy at quarterback for this game as opposed to Warren. Warren finally seeing the bench as he should. He's been absolutely terrible. Orgy, his biggest issue coming out of high school was the arm. Still is the arm to an extent. He runs definitely more than he throws. But I like the dynamic that it brings to this offense, and I think that like little wrinkle it kind of throws in, because Warren is like a pure pocket guy. Mobility is extremely limited, and I think that because they don't have a ton of talent at receiver, teams can really kind of hone in on just trying to load up the box, and force Warren like to basically be a hero from the pocket. For me here, though, with Orgy out there, his ability to run, I think, is going to open up the running game for Edwards, and ultimately just make their receivers like, I don't know, they're not going to make them better, but it's going to lead to them being more open, in my opinion. You're going to have to commit more guys to the box, more guys than teams already are, and really try and focus on shutting down this read option that they're going to run, because I can only imagine the amount of designed quarterback runs and all the goofy motions and stuff they're going to try and throw in here with Orgy in the offense as opposed to Warren. So I do think the USC defense has improved. I won't say that it hasn't, but they haven't seen an attack like this yet. They haven't really seen a true dual threat quarterback, and I think that's going to pose some problems for them. So biggest issue obviously here is if Michigan can't get the offense going, then there's a good chance their defense just ends up being exhausted and USC does cover this number, but I don't see that being the case here. I think Michigan figures it out a bit. I think they're a little bit more aggressive offensively because they have to be. And ultimately, I think Michigan keeps it within this number, maybe even shocks some people and pulls out a win here. I like the over as well, 46.5. It felt a little low to me, and it kind of just feeds into more of what I've been saying, where I think this Michigan offense is going to look a little bit different in this game. Going to surprise some people, going to surprise USC especially. So give me Michigan plus the 6.5. The next one we're going to talk about here, Utah taking on Oklahoma State. So you're probably the two best teams in the Big 12 here going head-to-head. Cam Rising is back for Utah. Not sure how the hand's going to be yet. Haven't seen anything confirming if it's like 100% better, whatever it is. But he's back. So for me here, I like Oklahoma State plus 2.5. This is a team extremely balanced on offense. Bowman's looked incredible. Ollie Gordon obviously has really struggled in these last two games. Teams have been like loading up the box and basically saying, okay, if you're going to beat us, it's going to have to be Bowman. And Bowman has risen to the occasion in both those games. I don't think Utah is silly enough to just load up the box and basically test Bowman here. I think Utah obviously trusts their defense. They're one of the better defenses in the country, and I think we're going to see them kind of play them straight up here. But the issue with that is, if you look at this Utah team against Utah State, they got absolutely shredded on the ground, which I was shocked by, truthfully. But in the same breath, we've seen this Utah team when they're not playing in Utah struggle. The defense is not as good for whatever reason. They don't have the fans. They don't have the elevation advantage, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is. But this team has definitely been more susceptible to giving up bigger plays in the last few seasons when they are on the road. So for me here, Oklahoma State plus 2.5. Clearwater is an equally tough place to play. This place is going to be nuts for this game. And I think Oklahoma State has a great chance to win this thing outright. I love Bowman. Like I said, I love Ollie Gordon. I think he bounces back here finally. I think he finally faces a team that's not just going to throw 8 guys in the box and say absolutely not. So give me Oklahoma State plus 2.5. Cal traveling to Florida State. Florida State a minus 2.5 point favorite. Pretty crazy to me to see Florida State favored in another game. I mean, I know they're at home, but man, how do you make this team favored over anybody right now with the way they've been playing? Enough, I almost convinced myself to push the button, but I did not. So for me here, I just like the under. Cal's a team, possession-based team. I think they're going to come in here. They're going to try and be physical with Jay Knott. I think they're going to find some pretty good success on the ground, truthfully. Florida State's not a team that really intimidates me. They did a really good job holding up against the Memphis rushing attack, but just got shredded through the air. Here, I do expect them to... I'm really not a big... I believe his name is Mendoza. Really not a big Mendoza guy in terms of the quarterback. So I expect them to rely on Ott, assuming he plays. He didn't play in their last game, I believe. Should be good to go for this one from what I'm seeing. But really just think this thing's going to be a stinker. The Cal defense, in my opinion, should be able to handle DJ. I mean, DJ obviously hasn't impressed anybody. This offense as a whole hasn't impressed anybody. So I think this thing ends up being like one of those, 17-14 kind of game. Just incredibly boring. Like I said, I almost pushed the button on Florida State. If they're going to get a win, I think it's right here. Because beyond this, I don't know when they win their next game. So if you want to get a little crazy, throw Florida State on the money line in there. But I like the under 44.5. I think this thing is just going to be a boring, inconsistent offense of Florida State, running the ball from Cal. Clock's going to run. This thing's going to end up being a real snooze fest. So the next one we are going to talk about, Tennessee taking on Oklahoma. So if you've watched Tennessee, I mean, they look the real deal. The offense looked incredible. They played a couple cupcake teams. They played NC State, who I just think is bad. They had a lot of hype going into the season with Grayson McCall. Just have really underwhelmed. The team's not good. They're not physical, whatever you want to call it. They got bullied. So now you get Tennessee probably playing like their first real matchup, in my opinion. Obviously playing against the Sooners here. This is a tough spot. I'm not going to lie to you. Nico has looked incredible at quarterback for this Tennessee team, but he also hasn't faced really any adversity or any real resistance. So this will be a real true test here for him, in my opinion. On the other side, Arnold has underwhelmed me for sure, and the running game for Oklahoma has been basically non-existent. I'm laying the 7 here on the road with Tennessee. I just don't see any other way. I've seen a lot of love for Oklahoma, and I get it, they're at home. It's one of those places that's tough to play, one of the places that we talk about all the time. But this Tennessee team, they're physical, they're big, and we watched Oklahoma play against Tulane, and I wasn't impressed with them in that game either. They almost lost to Houston the week before. This team just is not, I don't know. Arnold is not good. The running game, like I said, doesn't exist. I mean, Sawchuk, I don't think he's had over 30 yards in a game yet, and he's not even really the starter anymore. It looks like Barnes kind of took over that role. So, yeah, I mean, Tennessee minus 7. I don't see how you can come anywhere close to backing Oklahoma here other than the fact that they're at home. I just think Tennessee kind of has their way. They're loaded with offensive talent. whether it be at the wide receiver position or Sampson at the running back position. I think this Tennessee team is just going to full out physical Oklahoma on both sides of the ball for 4 quarters. So give me Tennessee -7. I got 2 more games we're going to talk about. The next one, a real snoozer of a game, but a game that I'm pretty interested in. Iowa traveling to Minnesota. Iowa laying 2.5 points on the road. For me here, it's Iowa or nothing. So Iowa coming into this game, they obviously have lost already once this season, lost to Iowa State. And if you look at that game, if you look at some of the stuff, you see like a 75-yard touchdown, you see the yardage totals, and you think to yourself, oh man, maybe Iowa's defense isn't that good. But me, of course, being me, I went back and looked, went through the game, watched basically the entire game again, and the 75-yard touchdown was a busted coverage. Outside of that, this Iowa team allowed 8.7 yards per play, and I want to say, or 8.7 yards per completion, and 3.1 yards per carry. So if you look at 2023, those were the numbers, pretty much what they averaged, allowing the year before, which had them a top 5 defense in the entire country. So this defense is still very much legit. They allowed 1 busted play in that Iowa State game, ultimately led to their demise. But for me here, you get a Minnesota team who I'm not impressed by. Quarterback they brought in, Brosmer from, I can't remember what school it came from, but he was an FCS school. And while he was good in the FCS, this is a different animal. You're playing one of the best defenses in the entire country. And I think Iowa is going to maul this kid. Obviously, the game's probably going to be low scoring. It's an Iowa game. Don't expect any kind of crazy points here. But Iowa defensively, I think there's a big edge to be had there. And then even on the offensive side of the ball, Caleb Johnson has been a man possessed. And if you look at this Minnesota team, they played UNC and then they played a couple of really easy matchups. In those 2 really easy matchups, they allowed like no rushing yards at all. So I think a lot of people are buying into that Minnesota run defense. But I ask you to go look at the UNC game because they allowed 130 yards on the ground to Amarion Hampton at almost 5 yards per carry. And if you watch that game, the UNC O-line was doing pretty much whatever they wanted against this Minnesota team. The score for that game was incredibly misleading as UNC's quarterback got hurt, and they really couldn't finish any drives, couldn't find any consistency except for Hampton on the ground, and he gashed them. So now you get an Iowa team who's running the ball extremely well. Caleb Johnson went absolutely crazy against Iowa State, who in my opinion is a far more physical defense than this Minnesota team. So I think Iowa has their way on both sides of the ball here. Give me the Hawkeyes on the money line.
Wait, before we get back to the picks, I wanted to thank you all for watching. Friends don't let friends watch videos without hitting the like button. So go ahead and press the thumbs up button and like the video. If you're new here and not subscribed, you should go ahead and do so because we're dropping new content each and every day on the Gold Boys Network. We strive to cover every sport and give out picks and analysis and valuable information for free on the Gold Boys Network. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell so you can get notified when we drop something new. I'm Brad Thomas. Let's get back to the picks.
The last one that we're going to talk about, Baylor traveling to Boulder to take on the Buffs. Obviously, we got to talk about this game because everyone likes to talk about Colorado. For me here, I like Baylor plus the 2 if Quan Flynn plays. So he got hurt in the last game. He is practicing this week. Looks like he is going to play. If he goes, I am 100% in on Baylor. If he doesn't, I am just off the game completely. But Quan Flynn played Toledo, dual threat, incredible arm, great with his legs, and he is an X factor for this Baylor team. And like I said, if he's in the game, I think they win this game outright going to Boulder. I think that he's a matchup nightmare for this Colorado defense. And like I said, if he's in, Baylor wins this thing. The Baylor defense is very physical, and while they haven't seen a team like Colorado in terms of receiver talent, they looked really good, honestly, even in the Utah game. You look at the score of that game and you think, oh man, they got shredded. But then you go see that the Utah defense, I believe, had 2 touchdowns or 1 touchdown and then 1 really short field for the offense. Either way, they basically gifted them 14 points. So for me here, I love the way this Baylor defense has been playing. They absolutely dismantled Air Force, which, I mean, they should. But it was about as dominant as I would have expected. And now you're going to play Colorado, who, as we all know, the offensive line can't protect anybody. Defense hasn't been much better. So if Taquan Flynn is in, Baylor on the money line plus the 2, however you want it, I think Baylor wins this game. And that does conclude week 4. I hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, I am CrustyKs. You can find me at goldboys.com. Let's make a whole bunch of money. I'll see you guys.